that's when you started volunteering. Like I'm sure.
I need to pay warrant.
Could we disband? Is that on the table? Or why don't we combine it with conservation? Consolidation. I'm sure nobody agrees on anything.
It'll give me a work out a little league sign or something, Mike, for when you want to vote.
What's that?
I heard you tell Adam you wanted to vote.
Yes.
We can do a little old school third base coach sign or something.
Yeah.
Tug the ear.
You call me coach, please.
No, it's a well-written resolution.
If there's anything from Parks and Rec, I'm sure our commission would be happy to ride over and also with me. I'm going to talk about it.
Libby, are we waiting on anyone, or? We got time too. Are we ready? Okay, if the board members can please make sure you have your microphones on. We're going to get started with the committee of the whole meeting. Are we on, Mike?
Yep, we're ready.
Okay, good evening. It's 7:03 PM on Monday, March 23rd, 2026. I'd like to call to order the Village of Brookfield Committee of the whole meeting. Can we have a roll call, please, Mike?
Trustee Ketchmark.
Here.
Trustee Whitehead.
Here.
Trustee Hendricks. Trustee Naramatsu.
Here.
Trustee Gilhooly.
Here.
Trustee Kaluzny.
Here.
President Garvey.
Here. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for being here, everybody. We have two items under regular business. The first is a discussion regarding request for proposals submitted for the village-owned downtown property located at 3717, 3723 Grand Boulevard. We do have a presentation this evening. First, I'm going to turn it over. As usual, we have a very detailed memo from our staff on this, as well as links to the proposal, but I'm going to ask our Community Development Director, Libby Popovic, to make a presentation and to introduce the presenters.
Thank you, President Garvey. As you heard last week when we had Redwood make their presentation as part of the RFP, this week we have Nath Construction and their team with Shreya to make their presentation, and this is part of the village's proactive step in developing the downtown area specific to 3717 and 3723 on Grand Boulevard. The RFPs were issued last year. They have been since closed. We did have two developers that are interested in developing that site. We also, just like last week, we do have SB Friedman with Jeff and Joe that are present to answer any TIF-related questions for preliminary figures. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shreya.
Welcome.
And to Chris LaBounty, the agent.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shreya Singh, and I'm excited to present on this proposed development here on the site on Grand Boulevard. But first and foremost, I need to say that Brookfield seems like a great place to live. I would like an invitation to Dancing with the Chamber. To add me to the list. Yeah. So with me this evening, I just, just want to introduce Chris LaBounty, who helped us find the site, and Jin Yu, who's leading the construction component for the project. So first and foremost, we really appreciate the opportunity to submit a request for proposal. We've really enjoyed working with Tim and Libby to understand the needs for Brookfield, as well as understanding what the vision for the downtown area looks like. So the proposed massing that you see is the site overview. You have the existing building at Brookfield Terrace, which is a multi-story multifamily condo building, and our proposal at 3721 mimics what that massing looks like. So our initial proposal was 50 apartment units with 15 parking spaces, and the proposal was based on trying to create density to align with the TOD development narrative, because there are 3 train stations in Brookfield, and we think that it's a really great opportunity to bring more transit-oriented residents into the community. But we recognize that parking is precious, and so we did put together a brief rendering to show what the elevation of the building would look like, and for everyone's knowledge, we did also reduce the number of units, so we'll show you what that floor plan looks like. But the base of this building is going to be focused on community access as well as community retail, and then 4 stories of multifamily. One key component of our proposal is that amenity space is typically on the 2nd floor of a residential building, and what we want to do is bring that amenity space down to the ground floor. So you have a fitness gym on the 2nd floor that's only limited to residents, but this, you could have a gym that's accessible to residents and also patrons from the community. So it's a little bit more inviting and inclusive of activating that community space.
It's a beautiful drawing, but that car on the left's taking up 2 spaces, and we
Yeah.
we take it for that, and that's
Yeah.
so just.
Jin, do you want to talk a little bit more about the detail?
Sure. The construction component is the first floor is a concrete podium structure, and then the floor above is a repeated residential floor with a residential that has a setback requirement from the adjacent buildings. When it comes to building facade material, we had considered we went through a thoughtful design process to make sure that our building facade blends in well with the rest of the building, and you can kind of see the red brick component to it. The finishes of a residential are Class A high-end finishes, and all units will have a walkout balcony. And at the rooftop terrace, there will be a common amenity serving as a common amenity for common patio as well. So those are some key highlights of the design and construction features. Thank you.
Thank you.
And before we move further, I would like to acknowledge that the architect firm is called Motif, and we do have representatives from the organization just to demonstrate how interested and eager we are about this project. So the revised second scenario was reducing the number of units and trying to hit a 1-to-1 parking ratio to see if that would be something that would be feasible. We were able to fit 40 parking spaces, but it does add about $800,000 to the development budget because it's an underground parking garage, and then you have additional parking space on the ground floor to accommodate 40 spaces. This is a proposal that we just wanted to show of how it would be feasible to do 1-to-1 parking, but this is not our preferred plan. And so before I dive into what the final plan looks like, I do want to provide just a little bit of color about the team. Pashupati Nath and Neelam Dwivedi are my parents. They immigrated here in the 80s from India and have focused on building up a really great real estate portfolio of single family to two flat homes. They wanted to educate their kids, and so I got really interested in real estate, and I am helping them achieve this vision of building bigger because this is not something that they had done in the past. So for the past couple months, I've been working really hard to assemble a strong team to bring this vision to fruition. My dad doesn't speak great English, but he can build a really great building. So it's really just elevating the skills that they have, and it wouldn't be possible without Crystal Bounty, who I introduced earlier, who runs his own real estate brokerage firm and introduced us to Tim and Libby. And then the capital is going to be raised with our co-general partner, Level. They are a very well-established firm, and we have worked with them in the past, and they also have experience in developing in the Chicagoland suburbs here. So one property that they did develop close by is the Jade Residences at Waterfall Glen in Darien, which is just another local suburb, as well as work on the renovation for the Holiday Inn in Chicago downtown area, and then they also have an office presence in Houston. So I want to highlight the team because I think we really bring the construction expertise, the financial capacity, and the ability to execute. And we think that Brookfield would be a great place to develop. And so as Jen mentioned, a lot of the finishes for these properties are Class A. So we really try to focus on quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, some nice cabinets, like sometimes like soft close drawers. And then this is another photo of the finished package that we typically try to achieve in the developments that we worked on. And then this is a photo of the living space because we do try to focus on natural light just because I think that's a really important component of a home. So living spaces often have really big windows and bring the natural light into the rooms. And then the bathrooms, this shows a shower, but sometimes we also have tub level finishes, but porcelain tile, walk-in closets. But we really do try to bring the best the best finishes to the units that we develop. So this is a proposed development schedule of how quickly we could move. We've already started to, settle on what we would love to have approved as the development plan, and we could submit that with your building department by June 2026 and be in the ground by August, assuming your building department moves faster than the city of Chicago. We estimate about a 1-year timeline for completion, and we can work in partnership with you to select the retail tenant or the retail programming that you want to go on the ground floor to help activate Grand Boulevard. But we can move as quickly as you would like because we really do believe in this site. So this option 3 shows the preferred scenario. And so it would be reducing the density from the original proposal of 50 units to 40 units. We're able to squeeze 17 parking spaces inside the building. And then we would like to work with the village to identify 10 off-site parking spaces that either the development could pay for or we could structure some type of city sticker program that residents could pay for. But we did speak to our construction lender to see if they had any issues with that type of parking ratio, and they wrote a letter of support that we're happy to leave behind with the village board. But this is an example of the sources and uses that it would take to achieve this project. The best thing about this site is that it is located in a transit-oriented development area. When we looked at the data, there's 52 trains that run per day through Brookfield, and you can get downtown in 33 minutes. So there's a lot of accessibility to to getting to the city. And when we looked at other suburbs, just to understand what parking requirements look like or what has worked well, we did see that Marbella Lamont Apartments did have a parking ratio that was less than 1-to-1, and it is about 98% occupied. I'm going to turn over to Chris just to talk about this slide.
Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. I'm Chris LaBounty. As Shreya mentioned, I own my own commercial real estate firm, LaBounty Real Estate. I focus on the train lines. And part of my philosophy is Chicago is different. We were built by railroads, and it's like spokes, right? If you look, there's 11 lines. Metro has 243 stations, 166 suburban stations, and they're all unique. Brookfield, and kind of the OG is BNSF. That is the monster line. It's the busiest. Brookfield has 3 stations. I think Hinsdale has a couple. Downers has 3 stations. It's kind of unique, whereas a lot of towns only have 1. If you look in this slide, you can see the bubbles kind of represent multifamily development at different periods. And you can see Downers has done, I guess if you think more is better, a good job of building multifamily. There was a pause from 2022 when interest rates rose. It's starting to come back now. And if you've read the news, multifamily rents in the Chicago area, we're kind of the outlier. Rents are growing here fast because not much has been built. I live in Elmhurst. We have built a number of developments. My wife and I live in one. We're empty nesters. We sold our house and we live in an apartment, and it's wonderful. So I know these train lines. I think there's huge opportunity here in Brookfield to do something like this for people that live in town and to attract new residents to your community. It's a short ride to downtown. I have a son that goes from Union Station to Route 59 every day. He works for NICOR, and he passes through Brookfield and all the stations in between. It's a unique place, and I think this is a project that could be very well received here by existing residents and, again, to invite new residents. Brookfield also has a high home ownership percentage rate. I think you're like 82% or something like that, which the national average is 65 to 67, I think, depending on how it's calculated. It's neither good or bad. It just is what it is. But there's a need for modern apartments and multifamily as people's living needs change. And so it's just, I thought this slide did a good job of highlighting where the development had been along the line. And I think these communities that you've probably seen, the effect these developments do have on downtowns, that makes them stronger. People can walk out, walk to dinner, do whatever, walk to the train, go downtown. It happens all across the Chicago area on every line.
Maybe the smallest words, people can't see which one on the chart, which one's Brookfield.
So here, Brookfield is right here. This is Brookfield. It starts here. This is Union Station, Halsted, Western. These are all stations. So the Hollywood Zoo, Brookfield, Congress Park, which I know you're hoping to get something else there as well. But that's Brookfield. And it's just a representation. Again, I'm not trying to say it's good or bad. It just is what it is. And you can see how other communities, and they're all different, have either had more or less. Some communities haven't had any. It's certainly.
This is Downers Grove.
That's Downers Grove right here. And the large bolus that you see, that's right by, they redid their village hall or police station area. That is the development that's under construction. Right there. Aurora Brookfield score at here, walk score, if you're familiar with that term, at the train station here is an 83, I think it is. And that's pretty darn good. You don't get a whole lot better than that. The highest in the Chicago area tend to be mid-90s, but Brookfield ranks up there with all of them. So I think that's, unless there's any questions.
Well, if you're available, I was going to let you finish. I mean, the board members can jump in any time, but I'm sure they might have questions of the whole team or parts of the team, so.
Perfect. Yep.
Oh, I
Well,
see the
now it's time for
I didn't
questions.
see the slide pop up, so.
Can, if I could invite.
Well, here, and I'll just open it up for the board to questions, comments, that type of thing, so. Jump in?
I have a question.
Sure.
I asked this of the other team, so I want to ask it to you as well, is how do you hang on to properties? So once the property is built, like what's the management and operations side look like?
Yeah. So this business plan contemplates developing and then owning for up to 4 years and then selling. We would engage a third-party management company to work with the management, like operating the property. But you know, I think our philosophy in development is we do try to remain as accessible as possible. We don't want to just develop and then leave. We want to make sure that we are part of the community and participating in helping ensure that the building that we've built is contributing to the community as well.
Thank you.
You mentioned the gym on the bottom floor, like in that, I think in the.
Yeah.
It was like in the lobby, right, of the building. What, did you say that would be open to memberships of the public as well, for the public as well, or just for the tenants?
Yeah.
I may have misheard.
We have yet been programmed, but we are open for any suggestions
Okay.
and
Yeah.
refine as we continue.
So, trustee, there is the entrance, the elevator lobby, the package room, et cetera, to the left on the floor plan, and then there's a 2,500 square foot commercial retail space. So that is where a potential gym could go, or like a wine, coffee, cafe. You know, we've spoken with Tim and Libby about just different programming ideas, and what we just wanted to make sure we did was that we didn't isolate the amenities just to the residents.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Other
So
questions?
could you talk a little bit, I guess a little bit about the parking, and a few other things, but your preference is the third option, which is the 40 units and 17?
17 on-site and then 10 off-site, so you have a parking ratio of about 0.7.
Okay, so talk about the second option just briefly. You are not asking for TIF incentive outside of the property. Would that be the same for option 2, where you would be building underground parking?
So option 2 becomes limiting because of the total per unit cost of $317,000 per door. The reason it becomes limiting is because there are home ownership opportunities at that rate in the Brookfield neighborhood. So in terms of what our business plan looks like, that per unit price just was not formidable to executing on that development plan. All three scenarios do not, we have included a request to it'd be free land and no building permit or impact fees. But in option 3, as soon as the building stabilizes, you start to generate about $260,000 in real estate taxes.
As you mentioned that's the overall taxes, not Brookfield's share, to that, correct?
It's about $6,500 per unit. This number came from Jeffrey.
That's all the taxes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then is option 2 an option, or not really?
Not really.
Okay. So then,
Sorry.
so looking
We just
at.
showed it to like give you a fulsome book
Comparative.
picture.
Okay, but looking at option 1 and 3, talk
Yeah.
about it from a pragmatic point of view. If you have 40 units or 50 units, and you have either 15 or 17 on-site, maybe 10 off-site, you have none off-site in option 1. Are we saying these people aren't parking there? They don't have cars?
In option one. Option one is a very transit-oriented development where we would be more dependent on people who use the train lines that would live at the property. Option three is a little bit more of a hybrid or maybe a little bit more accommodating, that we're not over-indexed on just train commuters living at this property, but maybe folks who work at local institutions that have one car per household, and then the rest of the units are made up by train commuters. That's why we really just don't want to do one-to-one parking.
Well, I
Yeah.
understand that, but I just thinking in reality, I mean,
Yeah.
you're honest about it, you think these people won't have cars and they're gonna be commuters, and
Yeah.
I understand that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question related to that?
Yep.
Because I think you analogized to a community in Lamont, or is that right?
Yes.
And
Marbella.
Marbella, yeah. Does that complex, where's that location in relation to the
So
downtown area?
it's right in the downtown. It's a TOD, right near the train tracks. And actually, they only get about 3 trains a day. They don't have that many, 3 trains each way. And the owner, I know him very well. I've talked to him about this, and I asked him, how is the parking working out, that it's limited. There is other parking lots, metro parking, that people can pay to park in, and that works well. It's interesting, he does have people that come and say, well, I need an indoor spot. He's 98% occupied. He has the ability to say, okay, there's other places for you to go. So I think that, Shreya's point here in this is, it's a very good comp to show that not everybody needs to have a car available at the ready all the time.
But is that in the middle of the
The downtown.
commercial district? I mean,
It is.
this literally is in the middle of the
It is.
downtown
Oh, yeah,
district.
yeah, it is right just south of or just north of the tracks. It is, I will tell you, it's not smack dab in the middle of downtown, it's on the edge, but it's within a half a block of everything, and has commercial on the first floor.
And then to Trustee Gahuli's point about the lower level, I mean, it seems only about 50% of that ground floor is retail space in what you're proposing. Is that correct?
Yes, because we are fitting parking spaces in the back of the building.
Part of the reason we are looking at this development, and part of the reason we created a TIF to begin with, was how this would impact the whole district. We bring 40 units there, 50 units, we bring limited retail. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. I think that would definitely be a scenario that we would be willing to take a look at. So would the trade-off be you reduce a little bit of retail to add a little bit more parking?
No, the opposite, adding
Okay.
more retail.
So increasing and then decreasing the parking.
Or, well, no.
Okay.
No, looking at more, I mean, we've talked about other proposals, we've looked at different things where you have more retail on that ground floor.
Okay.
And what you're presenting is partial retail and partial amenities, whether the tenant gym is part of retail or open to the public, I don't know.
So the gym component is actually, the square footage of the existing gym is a lot larger than what we have done in previously. We usually figure how many units, then how much square footage and amenity space that we provide. So the gym the area that's figured for gym is currently quite larger than what we have previously done, which the gym area is also fluid. The way we came up with approximately 2,500 square foot of retail space is coming from, we're actually doing a mixed-use development in downtown Downers Grove, and we have a commercial component to it, and then it's about 70–80% complete in construction progress, where we are getting active proposals from retail tenants, and a lot of clientele in that area, and which we also foresee in Brookfield as well, were more for smaller tenant space. And we're actually carving out a lot of space in that retail space to provide anywhere between 1,500 to 2,500 square foot. And that's where those square footage came in play after we've done some research on our previous projects.
So 2,500 square feet is the commercial space right now, and the gym space that you've allocated for the tenants is in addition to that?
Yeah, and
correct?
it's fluid too,
And
yes.
Okay.
Yep, so the gym place, commercial space,
It could-
fluid. It could
It
go.
could flow, so just as a thought, could be all one larger gym, but with a retail component that goes along with that, like a, and I'm just gonna throw this in, just brainstorming, like a clothing retail, sports
Mhm.
retail, that all went together, so it would be one huge
It could.
space? Is that, or you keep saying retail, is that what you're thinking? You're like,
Well, I'm
not, as
looking at the-
opposed to restaurant?
Yeah, I'm looking at the plan, and this one I think was for your option one that's included in here. It has 2,662 square feet of commercial. The tenant fitness area has 2,281 square feet, plus the lobby and all the other amenities, whether it's bike parking, electric, or trash, or all that part of it. So, I mean, my point is that the commercial space is about half of the downstairs, the first floor.
Correct, and if, as we progress, and if we have a retail tenant whose desire for more space, the gym area is where it gets fluid, where we could re-demise the wall.
But isn't that an amenity for the apartments?
It is amenity, but it is currently oversized for, for future planning purpose.
To me, when I think about like what our biggest needs are downtown right now, I don't think retail space is number one, right? We do have available retail space. I think long term we want to see more retail space and all of them occupied. But right now we're in a situation where I think we need to bring more activity, more people, and I think as you highlighted earlier in the presentation, this would bring customers given the number of units. So I'm encouraged by that aspect of it, and think about how these potential residents would frequent all the other businesses and help them continue to grow and thrive, and move past some of the turnover issues that we've had with some of the smaller tenant spaces in downtown Brookfield currently.
That's what we envision too, bringing more activities to the street fronts by providing density. Our clientele is young professional, empty nesters, and commuter to downtowns. And that's where the parking mix that we currently have is thought in towards that direction too.
Yeah, and on the parking issue, I know, one of the things that I think about and people think about with living car-free in Brookfield, yes, you can ride the train to and from downtown or to and from your place of work if it's along the train line. But what about all those other trips to the grocery store, to Costco, right? We do have one small grocer in town, but even, it'd be difficult to fill all your needs there. So, I think to me that's why the third option is preferable, getting closer to that one-to-one. I hear you that it's not necessary to fully meet one-to-one, but I think for our community, given the location of the development, the third proposal is. So it does seem like a better fit among those options, and then I like the idea of considering off-site parking options nearby, because again, I think right now we do have space downtown where we could, look at acquiring additional property for parking and not having to build underground and think about all the additional cost that comes with that. So I appreciate the creativity with that third option.
I think it opens up a business opportunity for a zip car service, right?
Plus, we have 4 motorcycle parkings as well as a bike storage area as well.
Is between option 1 and option 3, it almost implicit that you're marketing to different groups if you choose option 1 versus option 3. There's just a different level of parking, right? And so, and again, back to the point of how, marketing and selling these things, how important is a fitness amenity for residents of option 1 versus option 3? And just to clarify, your finance letter that said it would support, I think, was it option 3 that had the 10, or the 17 and possible 10? Was that finance letter contingent upon acquiring access or right to another 10, or was it just straight up they would finance 17, a building with 17 committed parking spaces?
The latter. They would finance the project if it was just limited to 17 parking spaces.
Okay.
And sorry, just one comment, Trustee Whitehead, on the, the rides to the grocery store or restaurants. I had actually read a statistic that young professionals, they use DoorDash up to 70% of the time. So we were also thinking about like a DoorDash or Uber drop-off, just to be able to accommodate, how people live today.
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions since you have design team folks here. I noticed you picked a lot of sustainability features potentially for the site, and I know it's still early in the design, but I just wondered if your team has experience with building green buildings, looking at solar, looking at some of these electrification features that you mentioned in the proposal.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rob Avila with Motif Architecture, and I'm actually a registered lead AP, and I've been involved in green building for quite a while. I've even done some of the certification myself for buildings. But as far as some of the green amenities, Jen, I don't know if you want to speak more to that, or on the construction side, what you were considering.
Sure. What we always, and that's where we have the rooftop amenity that is accessible, and that's where we'll see more of a green roof, and you'll see a greenery. When it comes to solar or any energy, we have ran multiple exercise for multi-family or type of building like this. We have ran in, as of yet, the technology is not quite there yet to have enough surface to be exposed so that we can generate enough electricity to suffice the needs. But we always am actively looking to see what's out there more, but me personally, I like to, when I'm living in the building, I like to see more greenery too, and that's where the rooftop comes into play too.
Sure.
And I also think, some of the things we'll consider as we get more dialed in is, maybe perhaps more all electric, maybe exceeding insulation values, better performing windows, et cetera, et cetera.
And that's where we propose the high-end finishes. We will provide stronger R value insulating factors, and then as well as the windows too. As much as we like to see those natural light coming through the units, the glazing specifications, insulation, all that gets considered for us to provide a high-end finishes.
Thank you.
Can I piggyback on that? When you're talking about green roofs, you perked my ears up. Because we have developers who come before us and say we're going to put a green roof up there, and it ends up being a few pots on the roof with a tree in it. So are you talking about a few pots on the roof that'll be an amenity for the neighbors, or are you talking about an intensive or extensive green roof that's part of the building?
In my terms of a green roof, it's not a few pots of a plant. As you know, I call those just the furnitures, exterior furnishing. But sure, do you mind flipping the pages to roof? I think there's a roof plan.
I think there is.
Oh, there was no.
One of the options.
So, yeah, sure. So let's say the building is about 12,000 square foot or so. 20% of the area is slotted for mechanical space, and then about 40% is walkable patio. The remainder percentage is what we consider it as a green roof. It also creates a buffer zone from the edge, although the edge will still have a parapet and the railing for safety. But from the middle core accessible space and out, there's a green buffer zone that we're envisioning to create, not just a couple plants, but I know what you mean.
Do you have a sense of like the depth of planting medium or anything like that? Just so that I understand that we're on the same page. The depth of planting medium for that green space?
Like the depth of it. It'll be raised planter box system. What would be the good depth for?
I think at the very minimum, for a green roof, you want at least a few inches, and that kind of covers you with like some of the typical tray systems they sell, or if it's a built-in planter type system. And depending upon stormwater, you sometimes end up going deeper than that, but I would say at a minimum would be a few inches of media to support the green roof.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, what's in our packet is option 1, and that's 6-story, right? And so option 2 or 3 is 5-story with it, right?
Yes.
Okay. With what we have here, it talks about the first floor. I'm just on it. Sorry. It talked about the first floor and
Is it page 10 or 11 in the PDF, or?
well, it talked about it being somewhat usable space. I think it related to the theater idea and here, a flexible performance-based space integrated into the ground floor retail plan that can host community cultural activities, small-scale performing arts, and local events. So is that part of option 3 as well?
It can be programmed in if that's the ultimate, like, if we can find someone who is able to program and run that space. But that would not be a development-run program. When I included that in the RFP, I was just including it as an option to demonstrate flexibility in the way that the ground floor is programmed.
So what would that come at the expense of?
The commercial space, right?
Yeah.
That would be in the commercial.
It would be in the commercial space.
Within the commercial space, so on that retail side or maybe on the fitness side or whatever?
Yes.
Okay.
As Jen had mentioned, that wall that demises between the fitness area and the retail space, that square footage can shift as the design is developed.
Thanks.
And can I just double back? So this is not requesting any TIF incentive in any of the options?
No, and.
Other than the land.
Yeah.
Well, the land, right, but nothing.
Nothing from the TIF.
Nothing from the TIF.
Correct, because, and this was the way I looked at it, the TIF is established, which is awesome, but I didn't see a lot of increment in it yet at this time. So, my hope was that this development would help contribute to that increment so that it becomes this flywheel, and then you have more TIF available for future deals. But we can make this work at the free land and building permit, at $0 for land and building permit fees, but we would not need TIF.
And they're rental, so the
They're
plan
all
here is
rental.
to create rental and maintain as a rental property, not condos.
Correct. Yeah.
So then my question following up, if you're
Sure.
done, maybe is for Libby. When we have asks for TIF dollars, we can use the pay-as-you-go option, right? Where we can have performance standards that need to be met, correct? Like the retail space needs to be filled, or we need to be filling the units, things like that, correct?
Right, and there can certainly be other conditions on that. Jeff and Joe can probably speak to more of the pay-as-you-go option. In this case, it's the land itself is the the request, so there
Right.
is no other TIF request for a
So
pay-as-you-go.
in this case, we wouldn't have any way to follow up and enforce isn't quite the right word, but incentivize filling those spaces, would we?
Well, I think, we're conveying them the property, so we can place any conditions
Right.
the board wants on that conveyance. So, if I hear where you're going, if you wanna make it a condition that that commercial space actually be activated, we could put that as a condition of the sales contract to them that says that space must be occupied within a certain number of months from certificate of occupancy, for instance.
Sure, but once the building is built, how is that, and how would we enforce that?
Well, and I can let Jeff explain, but
That's okay.
could we do a recapture agreement as part of it? But
Sure,
I'll let
trustee,
Jeff-
I think your point is well made, and it is the most, in my experience, and the village attorney can speak, obviously, he knows this stuff too, but cutting off the line of payments is the easiest way. So what you're suggesting is if there's a requirement, and again, this is a pretty small space for retail, but in a bigger project, if a developer doesn't maintain an adequate level of occupancy, call it 90%, you can either reduce or cut off downstream pay-as-you-go payments. So I think that's what you're sort of referring to. And given that there is no ongoing financial obligation from the village to the developer, that stick, if you will, I guess, doesn't exist. So I think your point is fair. The flip, and the other point I think is they have every incentive in the world to lease the space. They clearly want to make rent, and so, but it is nice to have that sort of economic incentive or stick, depending how you look at it, in a downstream agreement.
I agree with that point, but then further, if your development team is intending then to sell the property after 4 years, it makes me concerned about how long, if that incentive really does exist. If the property is being turned over, how do we ensure that we are actually getting what we need out of this property and getting the occupancy, I guess, is my concern.
If I could be real direct, Jeff, I think what trustee Hendricks is trying to avoid, we have a newer building that was built on Grand Boulevard.
Okay.
The village did not own that property. We didn't convey it to them like we may be doing here. In that particular development, the developer built, all the apartments are there, has chosen not to, for whatever reason, lease out, the first floor is not activated and it's empty. Could be for tax purposes, could be for whatever. And so I think what trustee Hendricks is trying to avoid, correct me if I'm wrong, is that scenario. And again, in that case, we didn't sell them the property.
Sure, you don't have any control. I think the problem is, frankly, common in, for a period of time, and my experience is limited, but developers who had a really successful apartment building were doing fine at renting apartments and making enough money to pay the debt service, to make profit. Some of them weren't particularly good at retail leasing or didn't have good brokers working for them, or they were just waiting for the perfect tenant. I mean, I don't really understand the total psychology of that, but like, if they're like, I could do it to a nail salon, but it's not a great tenant for my building, my tenants don't really care, it's low rent, and so they're waiting for the perfect tenant, which might be the same one you want. It's a wonderful high-end restaurant, but that could wait 10 years, and so the timeline isn't, there's always, I think there's often a trade-off. We can get a tenant today that's fine, and what if tomorrow we get a great one? And that's a tricky balancing act. So I appreciate the concern. I've worked on other deals where the retail is the trigger. You don't get any TIF until you deliver the retail tenant. Like some villages have taken a hard line. It's about the first floor rather than the upper stories. And I think that's a question of how you look at it. You need the bodies before you get the retail. I think that's generally true. But, I can't speak for the priorities of the board, I guess. What's animating this whole exercise for you?
Well, and perhaps even filling those apartments, if this isn't the ultimate long-term management team, do we even fill those apartments? Do we even get the TIF increment ultimately? So I do have concerns there.
Sure, I guess I'll give one more thing in general before you go to your personal thing, if that's okay. They've got equity investors and lenders, whoever the developer is, has a really serious financial interest to fill the building up. So
Okay.
I appreciate that it's scary, but like people with bigger bets than you and me, no offense, financially on the building getting filled up and making the mortgage. So again, not these guys in particular, just always. And so it is, hopefully the underwriting that we do, they do, their investors do, their lenders do, everybody gets comfortable, and they've done some homework already, that this can be successful.
And just, if I could just, because for my own mind, clarify that, I mean, the TIF incentive comes from the TIF, the increment comes from the assessed value of the property, so the property is being taxed even if it's not fully rented?
The taxes would be lower. They would appeal their, again, not they, a developer with a half-full building has half a tax bill in our book. And so they, in a pay-go
So-
deal, again, the incentives are aligned. They have every reason to want the building full. They want all the rent they can get. If there's a corresponding pay-go deal, I'm not saying you should give them one. I'm just saying, generally speaking, the fuller the building, the more the taxes, the faster they get paid back through the TIF. And so but yeah, the assessor, I think generally, if you prove that building's half empty, they're gonna charge you half the taxes, give or take. That's the way it's supposed to work.
But because there's no ask for a TIF incentive other than the land, and the land needs to be conveyed, but there's restrictions you could put on conveying of the land in terms of, I mean, I heard the term clawback or something else, where if certain, benchmarks aren't made, there's a repayment of some of the value of the property, that type of thing. Is that a type of incentive or available, or?
It can be done, the clawback structure.
Stick, I mean, it's supposed to, it's not really an incentive, it's a stick that we have.
Yeah, it's a stick. The best way to, in my experience, to deal with this stuff is on the front end and not close on the land until the construction loan is funded. And so when all the money's in the bucket, equity, debt, and your land, if there's a closing event and you lose control of the land, the odds of the building getting built are very, very high. The lender's already in, the equity's in, and your former land goes in. It's possible they could go bankrupt, a developer can go bankrupt in the middle of the process, but somebody's gonna finish that building, so I'm not terribly worried about that. But the clawback is hard. You gotta sue. If the building goes bankrupt, there's nobody to sue with any money. Like, it's a tricky, there's already a mortgage, you're the second position. It's difficult to enforce. The lawyers can do it, it's just time consuming and costly.
And I know the incentive is to, get the land and not, convey it until everything's all in one place, but that doesn't, when it's built, it doesn't mean it's necessarily gonna be occupied at the level that would create the increment as well as the retail space on the first floor. There's no protection or stick that we have there, other than we understand private equity has a strong desire to make money and return on their investment, and they would do everything they can to, but I think that's.
Yeah, people go bankrupt, it's true. Buildings go bankrupt. If a developer fails to make the mortgage payment, the bank takes it back and they tear down, the mortgage goes way down and they sell it to presumably a new operator at a low basis who fills the building up. So again, I don't want to go through all of the worst case scenarios,
No.
but the market sort of should deal with that to some extent if there's a failure of an operator. Again, I'm not trying to paint you guys with this brush, but it'll fix itself over time. You know what I mean? As much as I don't love that and we want it to be full from day one, every day, always, it's kind of out of your control once you sell the land. If you sell it to a viable operator who's going to build the building, you got to believe.
And sorry, Trustee Henricks, I jumped in on your point just while we had the consultant from SB Friedman here, so.
That's fine. And I do appreciate that you're not asking for TIF dollars. I understand that, and that is an attractive option. I just want to make sure that we're understanding the full picture.
Yeah, and I appreciate those questions. And I can tell you that the ethos of our development team is that we want to build. Like, we're in a housing crisis, we want to deliver units, we want to get people housed, and that's our main priority. But we're going to have retail on the ground, commercial space, retail on the ground floor. It's also our objective to lease it up, but we are cognizant that there is, local nearby vacant retail. So we will work in partnership with Libby and Tim to identify tenants that could come in. It helps the pro forma if we do collect that commercial income. So our intent would be to fill up that commercial space. And this is like urban planning nerd, but Jane Jacobs has this concept of eyes on the street. And I think if you bring density in and you start to have folks using the local coffee shop, the local gym, you just start to inherently just get more activity, which will then help support more retail to come into the area of Brookfield.
Yeah. On the retail point, to me, that's an advantage of this proposal, is that it is a smaller retail space and perhaps more flexible and accessible to different types of tenants, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not looking for one huge restaurant that you're looking for the perfect retailer. So I imagine this retail space is potentially accessible to a lot of different businesses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hate to do this because you just sat down, but on I'm going to bring our favorite TIF consultant back up for a question.
Should have stayed up here.
I know at this time they're not requesting TIF assistance, and there's some language this request is preliminary and subject to further analysis and negotiation. Obviously, much of this is conceptual, and if the board were to direct staff to work with a developer, there would then be a negotiations process. How does that work? At what point are they committing or not to a TIF number, and like what is our role as a board? Are we directing staff to, are they authorized to negotiate a TIF up to a certain percent, or like if right now the request is 0, how could that change over time, and what is the process for it to change?
Yeah, we would work with them and staff and try to get the project you want. So we're hearing feedback right now. I think all of us are hearing the same words from you all and want to try to get a project that conforms to the goals of the community.
Mm-hmm.
To the extent that the economics change from the way that they've proposed today, if they get worse, obviously, then I presume they would ask for money. Again, I'm not trying to put money, I'm not trying to ask them to do that, but like,
Yeah.
if you were to say we need a golden dome on top of the building, and they're like, well, we can't, that wasn't part of the plan. Golden dome costs $1 million, we need $1 million. Like that could be part, you didn't say that, but you know what I mean? Like that, that's how it's still moving. And so the way that it comes back to you varies by community, and I don't know how you and your staff like to do this, but keeping you informed, I think, we keep them informed, they keep you informed, I think. So I don't know how that happens, but certainly we don't want to bring you an RDA that's fully baked that you aren't supportive of.
And Trustee White, at that point, I think, 2 weeks ago, we heard the one presentation and we heard this presentation. I'm not going to push the board for a specific direction tonight, but it's going to have to come this week in terms of giving staff further direction. But I think the direction that staff would like and see is based on the ask that they have right now,
Okay.
I think, and versus what we heard 2 weeks ago, and find a consensus of which, as we explained, we're not even, if we arrive at a consensus, or the board arrives at a consensus, which developer we want staff to continue further negotiations with. It doesn't mean that we have an agreement, we will have an agreement. It's where do we want staff to dedicate their time? But I think we just base it on the ask they have right now, and then if things change or come back, they'd have to come back to us. I don't know that we would put in a specific, well, we give you the authority to grant up to this much in a TIF, ask or anything like that. So Tim, is that basically what you're?
Right, and, I said this piece a couple of weeks ago, exactly what you just said. I mean, I don't think it's realistic that you're gonna make a decision to direct staff to work with these nice folks or the previous nice folks. You're gonna hear both after tonight, you've heard both presentations. President Garvey, you and I will talk after and try to figure out what's the best path forward in terms of how do we want to get to a consensus as what direction does the board have for staff to work with a preferred developer to work out the fine points of an agreement, a redevelopment agreement, what type of conditions we want to place on them and so forth. And then we'll come back to the board with that redevelopment agreement.
Can I ask one more question on the
Yes, ma'am.
parking? Have those 10 spots been has been a spot identified for where those are? Or that's just, we think if we found 10 more, that would make this development better?
We did look at specific spots that might potentially be available in the village. There's a couple of ones near the downtown that we've looked at.
Cool.
There's no agreement.
No, right, no agreement.
But they're not
has been in
imaginary
place, no.
spots, they're real.
Right.
It's possible.
Right,
Great.
we've actually looked at some.
Thanks.
But Tim, to your point, and we talked about this a little bit 2 weeks ago, and I brought this up to you, we need a perspective of how this all fits together. I mean, 0 ask from the TIF sounds interesting, or does it? I mean, we have to see the analysis of what this generates for the district, just like the other project. I mean, there was obviously a bigger ask from the TIF, going forward on that, but what does that mean? I mean, so and I don't know how that process works, but for the board to make a decision on that, or which way we want to go, I mean, we can look at just the surface of what we've seen from a building point of view or parking or whatever, but again, we want to look at the effect it's going to have on that district, and that's where I think you play a big part of this.
If I may, Trustee, I appreciate your thinking, and it's a difficult situation. I mean, we don't have final numbers from either group, and that's not a fault of them or us. And so it's a difficult question to you all. It's really who is the partner we want to work through the details on, and the devil's in the details, frankly. And I think from this project, I guess if I editorialize this, might be a little bit out of line. The parking is the puzzle to me on this one. You know, there's been questions from the board about it. It's trickier than the other one. The other one's parking seems more, you know, simpler, but it has a TIF ask. This one, the parking seems more simple, but it has no TIF ask. And so that's oversimplifying the choice but from a technical perspective. Those are the things that are in my head that are turning it. You guys have got your own thoughts, and that's great. But and so we're not going to get to apples, unfortunately. I think right now at this point and I suppose we could keep going with them, you know, but it just seems like at some point we got.
And I think that's why it's going to be a big challenge for the board, because, I mean, even if you had a straight, okay, it's going to generate, if Project A is going to generate this much increment over this period of time, and balance that with the TIF ask versus what this project will generate possibly in TIF. It can't be a straight, how much TIF increment is it likely to generate, because you have to balance it against what the TIF ask was. I mean, there's a significant TIF ask in the other case. It's got to be a combination of that and the activation of the district, like Trustee Whitehead and the applicants talked about. Is one project is this going to be, will have less incentive to give, but it will generate traffic and development in other areas, whereas if we put all the money into the TIF, you know, we give a TIF incentive to the other developments, we might get a higher increment, but you guys are going to have to do the hard calculation. You know, it's not even a calculation, it's kind of a balancing act. What level of risk do we want to take to go forward, so.
But to Trustee Ketchmark's point, is there any way we could do even a high-level compare and contrast with, in terms of how much they would generate for the increment for the TIF? I know that there are other factors, to your point, President Garvey, but at this stage of the process, with the numbers that we have, can we do anything?
I think we don't know yet what you want. You know,
Yeah.
Which way do you want to go? You point us in a direction. I'll work with that chosen developer. I'll work with SB Friedman. We'll bring you better, well thought out proposals. You remember, the previous developer also had a couple options that they included.
I forgot that.
We don't know yet what you all like, what the board wants. So once you give staff direction as to this is the preferred plan that we like, we'll come and get you more refined.
But if I'm reading the board correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're hoping, in order to help them make the decision between developer one and developer two, some idea of what the TIF,
Yes.
the TIF increment would be versus what we would have to pay to get the TIF increment.
Yes.
And what I've heard before, and I understand the predicament, until we get more details, he's not going to be able to generate that. But I think they're asking for that before they make a choice, or at least higher level figures is about the possibility of that. Is that kind of?
Some ballpark, yeah.
Is it possible?
We can get that.
Yeah, we can prepare TIF projections. I just think
Is that, am I correct? Correct,
Yes.
that's what the board's.
Yes,
okay,
exactly,
so-
That's
President
fine.
Garvey.
That's no problem.
So maybe if you could, but I mean, as you mentioned, and again, not to complicate things, our developer last week had several options for us. Which, do you need to know which, are we talking option one, option three with this developer, and which option? Are we talking hotel apartments in order, or can you do the high-level TIF analysis on option one, option three for them, and hotel apartment for the other ones, and give us some idea?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the unit counts. I think we've got a hotel room count. I'd have to look back and make sure. And I don't mean to say this, we're gonna have 5 different numbers. I'm not sure what to do with them, frankly, after we do that. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
you know, I guess that's up to you guys, but there's the revenue side, there's the expense side, there's the, you know, the whole uncertainty over timing related to the hotel. Like, that's just a whole big question mark to
Right.
me. Again, I've forgotten that scenario. Tim reminded me of it, so.
But I think that's
a
what the
choice, you
board's
know, and that's a
asking
board
for.
priority. Then you take the time, you invest time and energy into a scenario that is less likely, frankly, than an apartment scenario to work, in my opinion. You know, I'm not saying it won't work, but the apartment is the safer bet. So if that's important to you all, we should chase that down, and then that is
How
really, there's
soon
only
could
one
you
choice.
come up with those high-level calculations on developer one, developer two?
Just the tax projections,
Yeah.
it'll take us a week or two. It's not a big
Okay.
effort. We've already done
Because
a
I
lot
know
of
time
research.
is money. We've heard it last week for the developers, and I love the, you know, aggressive timeline proposed by this developer, and we know they've spent a lot of time. So I think I'm hearing that's something the board would like to see before they give some direction on a consensus, at least that. So if, you know,
Yeah.
we're giving you homework that's
That's
kinda-
fine.
Okay.
So
I agree,
scenario
but-
3 for these guys is the one we're doing? 40 units? Is
Well,
that-
that's, I don't know we got to that. I mean,
They took, you guys, you want to do one, but you don't want to propose one. You don't want to do two?
No, they don't
Two's
want.
the one that's off the table.
Two's the,
Two's off the table.
You want to do one, but we don't want you to do one.
no.
Because there's too little parking.
Well,
Right, yeah.
okay.
You
So-
want to do 3, right?
3.
Right, and 3 is 40 units of apartments with 20, whatever the square footage of retail.
Oh, Trustee
Yeah, that
Kaluzny
we
has a
can-
question that might,
Yep.
Okay, that's
Does
simple.
anybody want to see the numbers on one?
No.
Or no?
no, okay, good.
Great.
But I did have
Trustee Kaluzny has
I did have a
something.
question, because it's something you just brought up, is that the other difference between, I think, the two proposals is the timeline of this one was very fast. And so I just wanted to ask one final question about that. Like, are you working on lots of other projects? And like, is that timeline, how realistic is that timeline of like, you're in the ground by August, if we could make it work, and then it's built next year?
Sorry, before you answer that, how long does it take your building department to review drawings?
They're pretty quick. They'll send it to BNF. You're going to get at least one revision of it with comments, which you're familiar with.
Yeah, there's
Probably
demolition,
two.
there's some stuff.
Couple of weeks.
But,
But
uh,
it, just to be, once it goes to BNF.
our number assumes that we would do the demolition.
It is correct.
Yeah.
And then, if we can somehow phase out the permitting process, between the demo site, and building separately, if that helps, then it'll streamline, the overall.
Phase out the permit process. We will be issuing permits.
No,
like,
between the demo and
The-
the
the
permits.
two
Yeah, we
different-
can
you
definitely
start
do
on the
that.
demo.
While building permit is, building plan is being reviewed for building permit,
The
Do the
demo.
dem- do the
demo
demo.
We could
permit
keep
would
it
go
separate.
So that we can
Yeah.
demo and then have a clean site, pad-ready condition, and then that'll help us streamline. And one of the additional strength about our group is that we are vertically integrated compared to the typical development world. They would get the entitlement done, they will select a general contractor from another party, and then there will be some reliance towards general contractor. How we, and this is one of our strengths too, how we structured is we're self-performing general contracting work, so we will be the GC, we'll be the developer, and we'll be turning over to, some cases we'll own and operate, or we, at the time, we could select an operating company too. How that helps is we have a better control on processes, design making decision from the early on phase. So we have a better control on the timing, making decision, and then financial aspect of it. And it just streamlines the whole thing fast, which also means there's a less risk compared to other developers. One of the study is that the showcase is that we've entitled a multifamily project during a tough time in prior to 2019, and after 2019 we started the construction when all the construction costs went up. We still went through and completed the project, and we delivered a successful project. So that's one of the proven point that how our structure helps out and could be successful.
Libby, could you get the board a summary of the units kind of within the district? And what I'm looking at is like Gatto's new building, the couple other Gatto buildings, the potential for the Triangle site. Maybe
With the number of units, or?
the number of
Oh,
units.
yeah, absolutely.
Right. So if you go like Grant to Brookfield Avenue and then Forest to whatever, Sunnyside, that 2-block square area or so, how many units
Are
we
around.
have there? You know,
Yeah.
include the 6-story, I mean, that's been there for a while, but, I mean, Gatto's added quite a few units over the last several years with his 3 or 4 buildings there.
Right, we can do that.
There, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Obviously you could tell the board is taking this very seriously and there's no clear consensus at this point. Kind of ask the same thing we asked the previous developer. If this site is not available and the board doesn't choose to move forward, are you open to other sites in Brookfield?
We did take a look when we selected this site. We did evaluate the other sites that are available. This one felt like the most feasible and aligned with the development vision, so this is our preference. If we're not selected, we could maybe go back to the drawing board.
Sure.
But this is really the site that we want to execute on.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the time and effort you put into. I know you've met with staff over an extended period of time. I know you could tell you've invested a lot of money in your materials and your presentation and your team and having your team here. I truly, on behalf of myself and the board, thank you for doing that and taking the time. You've clearly done all your homework and thought this through, so. we'll
President
just-
Garvey?
Yes.
Yes. To President Garvey's point, you didn't envision or wouldn't envision building this same project in the Congress Park area?
So in that area, I think because of the frontage along is it
Ogden.
the commercial is just, I think it would be a little bit tougher to execute on at this stage. So that was one of the main reasons why we wanted to focus more on a more mixed use, higher density with apartment units and lower square footage with commercial. You know, the other use that you could have on that site is having like larger commercial space, like, I don't know, like a Mariano's or something, and then do multifamily closer to the train line. But that project, and I'm just speaking for myself, but that project is probably a little bit more out of reach for what.
Well, you could talk to staff about that in terms of the need for commercial versus pure residential. I mean, that's made up of a lot of different parcels, so, but, I mean, I understand Trustee Ketchmark's question or point, but I know staff would be happy to talk. Again, the board has clearly not made a decision on this project. I truly appreciate you coming forward. I appreciate, we need a little bit more time and need some of the numbers, so, okay? Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Truly appreciate the time. Okay, we're going to go right into the next item, which is a discussion of the 3700 block of Prairie Avenue lighting streetscape scope in relation to the Prairie Avenue improvements. This is Dan from Hancock Engineering here. Thanks for coming out.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, Dan. Thanks for sitting it out, and thanks for being here.
Of course, of course. So this is a follow-up to the presentation I gave in the fall, I think October, November, just to introduce this project. This is the Prairie Avenue improvements that we are working on. It's a roadway resurfacing project on Prairie Avenue from Brookfield Avenue up to 31st Street. Some highlights, just a kind of a reminder. Besides the resurfacing, we are looking at putting bump outs at the Washington and Prairie intersection. We are going to be replacing the water main between Brookfield Avenue and Monroe Avenue. It's one of the poorest condition water mains in the village, so that'll be a big improvement. And we are looking at streetscape improvements on the 3700 block. So that's what I'm here for tonight, to go over that, to get some concurrence from the board, discuss some of the lighting improvements. We've offered a couple options for review, and so that is.
And Dan, I know this isn't
Yes.
a big part of the project, but could the bump outs at Prairie and Washington, are those bump outs on Prairie and/or Washington, or where are the bump outs?
They would be bump outs on Prairie to protect the
kids
parking there,
yeah.
and then to shorten the crosswalk.
For the people, okay.
Because so
That's-
many
kids go to school and that's.
kids go to school and cross at Prairie Avenue, and it's
Sure.
not stop controlled on Prairie Avenue, so that would shrink the crosswalk, make it
Perfect.
safer, more visible, and
This is for 2027, correct?
yes, yeah, and let me get into the
Thanks.
schedule here.
Just making sure I wasn't getting excited about another water main closure this year.
Soon, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just some background. So the schedule we've got here, so we are underway with phase 1 and phase 2, preliminary and design engineering. Our first submittal to IDOT is next month. That's why we're trying to finalize the scope here. Our final submittal would be to IDOT in July with the plan of getting on a November letting and construction in 2027. So just to answer your question there. But, so we've been working with staff. We have gotten a recommendation on the Central Mayoral Council's program for construction next year. That means, again, like our other STP projects that we've done over the last few years, that'd be 80% funding for the construction and construction engineering. So, and then just as a reminder, obviously you guys are all aware that we have done Streetscape on Grand Boulevard this past year. That's kind of the benchmark with what we're trying to use here. Obviously, we want to stay consistent with the improvements that we've made so that we're not kind of reinventing the wheel here. So that's going to be the recommendation that we're going to go with. I'll get in more into that, but just as a reminder. And then we have already done some lighting on Prairie. I presented on this, I believe, last spring, due to some requests from some of the businesses on the Prairie side. The board elected to install lighting in the main business corridor on Prairie from Brookfield north to the mid-block alley. So that lighting is already consistent with Grand. We've already installed pedestrian poles there. So, but the goals tonight are just to get some concurrence on the proposed streetscape scope and the limits for Prairie on the 3700 block, and then get a recommendation from the board on some of the lighting improvements. So. For the streetscape improvements, as I mentioned, very similar to Grand Boulevard, full curb, full sidewalk. We would do another strip of brick pavers behind the curb line just to give it some color, not have it just be a gray concrete surface the whole way. New trees with tree grates, spaced out, alternating with the existing lighting that we just installed in the fall with structural soil to give them more room to grow and to expand, and then new signage and pavement markings. So again, it's very similar to what we've already done. It would just be kind of a continuation around the corner from Grand Boulevard, and the idea would be to make those improvements to the mid-block alley and then transition just to a sidewalk and some spot improvements going north. North of the alley, we just have grass parkways. It kind of transitions from commercial to residential, so the streetscape improvements would stop at that mid-block alley.
Which alley are we talking about, the post office or the one by Fill My Jar? Fill My Jar, right?
The Fill My Jar School District Building alley, right?
Yes, yeah, the one by Fill My Jar, just north of there.
The west side of the street.
Correct. Well, so there'd be streetscape improvements on both sides. You can kind of see it there. So Fill My Jar would be the north limit on the west side of these streetscape improvements, and then the post office driveway entrance would be the north limit on the east side. So, and again, the idea would be to stop the improvements there because we transition to grass parkways. We wouldn't, to maintain some of the green space there, and again, it's turns to more residential. The idea would not be to do full sidewalks past those points. So, before I get into the lighting and kind of transition into the second topic, are there any other questions? Is there agreement on this? Is there anything else that you guys are interested in adding?
I appreciate the consistency with what we've already got out there. I appreciate that you thought about all of this ahead of time, and I'm, as an aside, I'm really excited about those bump outs on Washington and Prairie.
Same.
But I mean, I think, when you came to us in the spring about that, I think this was the kind of the thought that we'd be consistent going down the block and, with the cutoff point being the alley and that, so everybody comfortable with that?
I love the brickwork. I think it's all turned out really nicely so far, so I love the continuation. And this is just a maintenance comment. I know nothing we really need to discuss, but when NICOR or other, I don't know if it's ComEd or whoever comes out to do work, I know that the brickwork, like let's say down by the library, those kind of more corners there, they spray paint right across those. And I know I heard that it's supposed to wash off. It doesn't wash off. So I'd say, I don't know how we deal with that as a village, but that would be, I'd hate to see, more of that brickwork get ruined with that. I don't know if there's an option there. Just something to note.
Yeah, that's a good thing to note. I will talk to the Public Works Department tomorrow, and we'll at least look and see kind of what impact that's having. I know those brick markings or it's the paint markings take a while to come off of those bricks, so maybe having some type of cleaning solution, or we can do some research to
Maybe
see,
something,
because it's
'cause
such
some
a
of them-
visible area
Yeah.
that,
It's such a nice area, and the investment in it, I know we've had it near that corner closer to the library. I mean, it's been like 5 years and it's not coming off, right? So maybe there's a special,
I wonder if there's a sealant or something that we could put on the bricks to help prevent
maybe
that.
that's the answer, yeah.
yeah, something that you can power wash, because I know we did have some markings after we did Grand Boulevard around the seat wall, because they reset a lot of that brick. There were markings, and DPW did a phenomenal job of cleaning those off before the grand opening. It was just kind of miscellaneous, pink paint all around, and they spent a lot of time cleaning those up, and like I said, did a
maybe
phenomenal job.
Just take a look maybe around the library area
Yeah,
and
the
stuff like
Lincoln
that.
Park Grand Corner, that whole intersection there's got it.
One thing that I was gonna point out that we talked about is staff. I mean, I get how we're limiting these improvements to the alley by District 95. That's defining where the downtown is today. What, in 20 years, well, how long is this gonna last, 30 years? In 30 years, do we think downtown's gonna expand north? I think we'd like it to. It's not that way right now, and I get it, you go north of here and the parkways are no grass. But if we think there's a opportunity or a chance that the natural expansion of downtown will spread that way, now is the time to perhaps think about
I was wondering about that too, at least on the west side of the street. The east side still feels like it starts apartments right there, right on North, am I thinking of
There's
that
the-
right?
the-
Post
There's a
Right
church
after the
there
post
too on the
office.
corner.
There's the old Seventh-day Adventist property, which is apartment condos, and then there's a few houses, and then there's the church on the east side. But I mean, is that going to, Tim, is staff suggesting not just lighting? I understand, because we've talked about that, how the corner of Prairie and Grant could be kind of tied into the Grand Boulevard development area, and that alley between Grand and Prairie could be, so is staff?
You do the brick treatment on the parkways to replace the grass that's there now. Right now, it's the traditional kind of residential look to it. Again, it is mostly residential. And maybe if you did it now, then you have the problem, and I'll let Dan comment, but you have the problem that maybe it looks out of place for a while until development occurs.
One thing to support that too is because we're doing water main on the west side of the street, all of that sidewalk is already being replaced as part of the water main improvement. So it's not even like, it's kind of a good excuse is, hey, we're replacing all of the sidewalk already to the end of the block. Yeah, add that brick treatment and make that improvement now with the idea that you really are defining your business district.
But there is a difference there. I mean, if you look at Grand Boulevard in the area we're talking about, what is it, 24 inches of pavers?
Mhm.
And then the rest is concrete.
Correct.
What would we be talking about in these other areas? Those are pretty narrow aren't they about 4 or 5 foot parkways right now?
Yes, so you would have, it's about a 5-foot parkway plus a 5-foot sidewalk. So you'd have about 2 foot of brick and 8 foot of sidewalk. It's a little bit wider south of those alleys where we're talking about, but it's.
So that's my point. We wouldn't have any grass left. We would basically be paving all that over.
Correct, yes. You'd be putting a sidewalk / brick paver treatment from the back of curb all the way to the back of walk. So that's the downside is you're taking some green space. You'd also be removing all of those trees. There's some mature trees there. You'd be replacing them with younger trees, obviously, because you need to work out the spacing with your lighting and your new trees like we did on Grand. As Tim mentioned, you're also paying 20%. You're kind of defining your business. So that'd be something to weigh, and the board would have to decide what the priority is.
My thought on that is we wait if we're expanding and we add that to it because we're commercializing that residential district right now if we do that.
Yeah.
I would wait as well. I'm looking at Google Earth, I think, yeah.
I'd like, when we talk about lighting, I'd like to see what it looked like to increase the amount of lighting, but to keep the lighting continuing around that block there, if there's room for it, but maybe there doesn't need to also be.
So is that an option, not do the pavers, but do consistent lighting all the way down? Is that what you're possibly suggesting?
I'm just curious. I don't know where the lighting is placed between the sidewalk and the grass area.
Yeah, and we'll get into the lighting. And one thing too, as kind of a middle ground is we can always come back in a couple years and apply for an ITIP grant for doing the rest of the streetscape. And we've applied for that in the past, and we can flesh that out a little bit more to buff up that application and do the rest of the streetscape up to grant if that's something that the board thinks is a priority in the future, if there's more development coming in. So it's not something that you would need to do today, and it's, hey, you're gonna lose all that funding. Yeah, we just won't catch it on this one. We'll find another funding source for it so that the village isn't paying for the whole thing.
Because
So
it
there's
clearly
options.
seems the board, the consensus is not to maybe do the pavers all the way down, whether it's just the west or east and west side.
I do have a question though, a suggestion maybe. What if we carried some element of the bricks down into that more residential area up to Grant? So either the, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the little walkways that come out, right?
Like the
Carriage
entry walks.
Either the carriage walks are brick, just till the end of the block, just to carry the theme through, or maybe along the curb side, there's just that single layer of brick, you know, that goes, you know, like perpendicular to the gutter. If that just was carried through, and then we leave the grass. I didn't know if we wanted to kind of keep some part of it, but I wouldn't get rid of the grass now. If that was my house, residential, I'd want the grass.
I appreciate what you're saying about trying to carry the brick through, but I think to Trustee Ketchmark's point, the parkway is narrow enough that I think if we add that brick, we lose the trees and
Right.
it makes it hard to still have that parkway.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that the lighting
lighting's another way to
changes
do it,
down the
yeah.
block do carry the theme down the block and sort of prepare us for the future if at some point this does develop in some other way. And I do agree that we could come back and change the parkways after the fact in that case.
Yeah, the lighting's a little bit more of a long-term commitment. Obviously, you don't want to be replacing your lights in 5 years, but you could come back and finish the rest of the parkway treatment when you're ready to make that full commitment. Get rid of those, you know, the trees are the big part, is you might have some pushback if you remove all of the full-size trees for
I wouldn't want to remove those either.
an improvement at this time, so.
So I guess we're not going to continue the bricks pavers down past the alley right now, but we are interested in talking about continuing some form of the lighting down the block?
Correct.
Okay, is that helping give?
Yes,
direct-
yeah.
okay.
So the streetscape, we will keep, the limits will, like I said, kind of keep the scope of improvements consistent with Grand Boulevard, and we will only go up to what's shown on that exhibit, the alley on the west side, and then the post office entrance on the east side. And that'll be for the streetscape minus the lighting, that'll be the extent of the improvements. So,
But is the board asking whether we do lighting all the way to Grant then?
yes, yeah, and I'll get into lighting
That-
now.
yeah,
So
I
we've
think
got
that's
some
the
other,
next-
some other options for the lighting. So, for the lighting, as I mentioned, we have done pedestrian light poles, the 15-foot, same as on Grand. We've done that already up to the alley in the post office. So we met with staff. We've got some options for carrying that lighting on through to Grant. That's something that's been discussed in the past, as this is a little bit of a downtown corridor, rather than having the older existing concrete poles, having something a little bit more decorative. So just as a kind of refresh, these are the pedestrian poles on Grant. It's a 12-inch fixture height, 15-foot pole. It's not really a roadway pole, it's more of a pedestrian pole. It's got banner arms, some planter arms, and then this is what we've got at the ends by the railroad and by Grant Avenue. This is a combination roadway and pedestrian pole. You can see how it's got the pedestrian fixture on the sidewalk end. This is what we have on the ends to provide better lighting for the intersection. So just so you can see kind of what the two options are. So our first option would be to have our pedestrian poles in the downtown like we currently have, and then as it transitions to the residential, to just install those larger roadway and combo poles. It will provide, the pedestrian fixture provides lighting to the sidewalk area, and then you would have the roadway pole that would provide additional lighting to the roadway. I know you guys have already kind of mentioned that you like the idea of carrying through the pedestrian poles, so this may not be the option for that. Just so we can look at the cost, it'd be about $350,000 to install the lighting all the way up to the intersection, about $70,000 from the village side. Second option is kind of a hybrid. You would still have those roadway poles, but then you would stagger it with pedestrian poles to have, since it's kind of a little bit of a mixed-use area, and that would add about 15,000 on the village's portion, so 85,000. And then this is the option that my guess is that you're kind of leaning towards is carrying those pedestrian poles all the way to the end. That way, if you have future development and you want to do the parking or the parkways, that you'll still have a consistent appearance. So to the end of Grant, correct, yes. This would be to the end of Grant, and then we included some combination poles at Grant Avenue, similar to what we did at Grand Boulevard, because that provides some additional lighting at that intersection, and it gives you the option if you want to continue with roadway poles going down Prairie Avenue into the residential district. So, any questions on those before I kind of summarize that?
Well, I mean, you're looking for a consensus on one of these three options, right? Or-
Correct, yes.
So this summer, okay.
Yeah, here's kind of the comparison. We've got roadway, just roadway or combined. You've got a combined staggered with the pedestrian, so a little bit of a mixture of the two, and then you've got just pedestrian. The cost, relatively speaking, for this project is pretty close. You're between 70 and 85,000. So I think it's more so what the long-term vision is.
Trustee Hendricks, do you remember us having some discussion somewhat on this on Grand Boulevard north of Grand? Remember there was a potential for where
Yes.
if we continued on Grand Boulevard and want to continue the lights, and I think we weren't for the roadway, right?
I don't remember. What were-
My recollection when we had those design meetings was that the reason why we did the combination pole at the intersection was so that you could continue the combination poles to provide
Yep.
more roadway, because it's, you're kind of more in your thoroughfare. You're not as much in
Bless
the,
you.
Grand Boulevard. People are going, they're parking, they're walking. You would continue the combination poles going north to Veteran Circle so that you can have your pedestrian lighting on the backside for any pedestrians on the sidewalk, but still be lighting the roadway and providing enough illumination so that there's visibility for the
That's what I remember too.
Vehicle
Like it wasn't
traffic.
the same density of pedestrian level light poles, like continuing all the way down Grand, but it was that combo pole that's right at Grant and Grand would continue.
The other option too is you could always just keep the combination poles at each intersection, since that's obviously a point that you've got traffic in both directions, and then go back to the pedestrian poles mid-block. We just put an application in for Grand Boulevard for like 5 years from now, so that would be something we'll come back to and have some broader discussions on what the long-term vision is for lighting.
What's out there now? Are there roadway lights in this stretch?
Yes, yeah. So from the alley to Grant, you've got 3 concrete roadway fixtures, similar to what you see on like Ogden. So they're not as decorative. They're not the wooden ComEd poles like you typically see in your residential area, but it's
It's the same thing on Grand when you get north of
Correct.
Grant to the circle.
And that's
Yes.
not providing any pedestrian lighting, is what you're saying.
Right.
It provides, there's
Spillover,
no
but-
pedestrian fixture, yeah.
Yeah.
So each of these options, I should say, we've run the photometrics, check the lighting levels that you have currently. Each of these 3 options would provide more visibility than you currently get. They meet the lighting standards for the sidewalk, the parking, and the through lanes. You'll get a little bit more through lane visibility with the roadway lights, but even with the pedestrian lights, you're still meeting and improving what is existing.
Thank you for emphasizing that. That was going to be a question I had. For this block, personally, I actually prefer option 2. I like the combined alternative for that specific block of the downtown.
Right, I was thinking that this block is different than the next block of Grand. If we continue down Grand Boulevard towards the circle, I think this block of Prairie is different than that block, so, I mean, I would tend to agree with Trustee Hendricks that hybrid option 2 is kind of attractive. I like the idea of lighting the sidewalks more. There's a lot of people that walk to the train and to other things down that way, and just making it a little brighter on the sidewalks, which I know basically any of the, all pedestrian lighting would do that also, but I like option 2 also, but.
I guess, can I just ask, as you continue down Prairie to 31st, is there a lighting we're doing there also?
That's the next thing that I'm going to
Okay.
present.
'Cause I'd
So
love-
yes, yeah,
I
that
wanna-
would be
I wanna-
another
guessing I wanna
conversation.
understand that that's gonna match, or are we picking
Right.
like the first block between, to Grant looks one way, and then from Grant to here looks another way, and now it's gonna look another third way the rest of the way to 31st, or are we just picking two things?
Right.
So they're
What's the
kind of
better?
two separate discussions. So this is kind of finishing out your, and I understand that it's not as commercial heavy for this portion of the block, but kind of your downtown district. Once you get past Grant, it's strictly residential. So what I think you typically see is going to, if you did decide to go to the decorative fixtures instead of like the ones that are currently on Grand, like the black Sternberg decorative fixture from the concrete or the wooden ComEd poles that you have north of Grant, you'd probably want to do roadway. It's just less foot traffic. You'd get a little additional lighting. It's more of a, you'd kind of be replacing roadway with roadway for.
So not the same place where there are roadway lights now, you wouldn't do roadway plus pedestrian, you just do roadway only?
You could do either. I think just typically what you would see, since it's not a commercial or a downtown district, you typically don't see as much like pedestrian specific lighting. So you could do a combination pole, so roadway with the pedestrian fixtures on the backside. That would be a kind of meeting in the middle, and I could see doing that, especially since it's, it's a collector route, it's a main thoroughfare through Brookfield. I would think you'd probably at least want to do roadway, and then if you want to add the pedestrian fixture, then you can.
So you're talking like that'd be the 3600, 35 and 3600 block? I mean, how far would you take that all the way down? I mean, I never thought of pedestrian lighting going all the way down 36 and 3500 Prairie, and is that what you're?
That's what I'm asking, like all the way to 31st. Are we saying there's new lighting going in? And then I guess my question is, how much does that match as it continues? It's not that long of a road.
Let me skip ahead to the next slide. So, yeah, and that was the other thing that we wanted to bring to you. So the initial scope of work was just looking at streetscape and lighting up to Grant. It's kind of similar to what we just did on Grand, kind of wrapping up that area, your downtown corridor. But we have had like preliminary discussions about, hey, do we take this lighting and go all the way down Grand to Veteran Circle? Do you go all the way to 31st and Kemen? It's the same discussion that you can have with Prairie, and that's a broader discussion for the board to weigh in on. And do you take this roadway lighting and do you do decorative fixtures all the way up to Washington, and then look at maybe tying Washington then into the Circle and down Maple? It's just a bigger discussion, and if you're going to do it, you at least for Prairie, I think you probably do it now because you're only paying 20% of that cost. So I did run those costs to do just roadway lighting. I think it's every 145 feet, so it would be more lighting than you currently have. You'd hit your sidewalk and through lane standards. You would be at about 77,000 per block. So each block that you added would be about 75,000. So if you just wanted to go up to Washington, it would be a village cost of 308,000. If you wanted to go and continue that, Grant to Washington would be about 150. If you wanted to go Washington to 31st, it'd be another 300. So you're looking at $450,000. If you wanted to say, hey, let's take this lighting and let's go all the way to 31st and connect one of our busiest areas through the village with new decorative lighting.
Guess that was my question, because the whole roadway is getting repaved, and so my question was like, and how far is the lighting also getting redone? Is it only that?
But this figure what he's giving us as options to extend this down, the 77,000 per block is for the street light only, not pedestrian.
Right.
Is there any desire to continue pedestrian, the combos all the way down past Washington, or just pedestrian, or just street light only to match? But, okay. Is anyone thinking that we would do combo past Grant, where you have pedestrian lighting past Grant? Okay.
I don't think so.
I
Now,
don't think so. It just brings me back to that other question of option 2 or 3, and like halfway down the block, switching what the lighting is, and then at the next block switching it again. So I guess that's my question of like the combo of pedestrian and roadway, and then switching to roadway.
Yeah, and you
Just
do
lot of
have a
different
little bit of a
things.
change in use, so like, it's not like you're just randomly, one business is getting one and one business is getting another. You do have a little bit of you're going from, your kind of streetscaped commercial area to your more residential area for that side of the block. So I think that would be your argument for option 1 or 2, incorporating the roadway lights. But really, it's, it's up to you guys. You're meeting your standards either way. So it's not like you're providing a lower level of service necessarily. So
Thank you.
it's a personal preference.
31st is all the same. That
But I
work.
mean, just because I see Doug slouching down in his seat.
You're losing
I mean, we're talking, Joe, even the scenario of the cheapest option of just extending the roadway lighting past Grant all the way to 31st Street, 77,000 a block is what? It's another 300 and something, 300,
I've got.
Village's share.
450
Okay.
based on, I believe you've got 7 blocks. So it was 150 to get up to Washington. If you just wanted to say, okay, we're gonna connect to Washington and eventually go down Washington 8 corners to tie in, kind of your main area, and then an additional 300 to get all the way up to 31st. So about 450 total.
But I think there was some talk about, was there a suggestion to go all the way Prairie from all the way to 31st Street?
I wasn't suggesting, I was just asking.
No, that's, but I guess I'm trying to,
I'll suggest it.
But is that part of what we're talking about for this project now, the scope of it? This is something in the future going forward, right?
You could add that to this project.
You
That's
could.
why I'm coming
Okay.
to you with this
80%,
now,
that's the-
because we have gotten confirmation from the central council that they will fund lighting improvements. So now is the time to consider this with 20% funding.
I mean, those poles are really ugly, so it'd be cool to have it match all the way down.
But
all the
But I
way,
know that it's
all the
a
way down
cost.
to what? Like,
All the way.
all the way to 31st Street?
all the way to 31st.
Yeah.
So,
I get that that's
and
I mean, I don't
before.
know when we're gonna come back and make that improvement again, is to your point.
The one thing I will note, you will have, because you currently have the old wooden ComEd poles, what you typically see in your residential areas, it's very low maintenance. This, you are committing to additional long-term maintenance costs
Like painting.
in an area that's like painting, like, let's say in 30 years, replacing the lights because they're, won't be nice and brand new anymore. So there is some long-term, even though you're only paying 20% today, you are taking on some additional long-term costs to put decorative lighting in what is a residential area, not a downtown. It is one of your biggest collector routes, but just something to consider.
That's a big point, because we've seen those poles in other areas. We've seen that on our welcome signs. 5 years? 5 years, and it's all starting to look like it's time to paint it.
And also, like, I mean, who are we providing that amenity for, right? These are residential blocks right now. So I understand it's a thoroughfare, but we're putting in a decorative light for the people who are driving by. I mean, I guess there's some benefit to the pedestrians as well who are walking by, but it's not pedestrian-focused lighting. To me, it seems like a significant cost to take on with not clear benefit, like going through all of these residential blocks and then focus the lighting improvements where we have retail, commercial activity.
I tend to agree with Justin. I think it's a nice luxury, a nice idea, but spending 350 or 450,000 to put lights, and we're talking just street lights, all the way down to like 31st Street. I think that 450,000 could be spent somewhere else in the interim, and maybe down the road we go somewhere else.
Well, and there are streetlights currently. It's just
Right.
that they're not the decorative type. So we would be paying for a more decorative street light on the residential block.
Yeah, I think I'm okay just going to Grant for now. I think if we had another option would be just to focus on the lighting at the intersections along that corridor. I don't know if that would be too, mishmashy with the other ones, but I think that's where people, cross the most. Those are the most, from a safety perspective and lighting, those are probably the most impactful points.
Yeah, and that may be something where we deal with ComEd and see if we can add fixtures to the existing poles, because the only problem with only doing the intersections is then we'll have to tie in and run the nice thing about going all the way is that you run one controller, and you're getting into the engineering
makes
side of
sense.
things. But and I like the idea. It may not be as efficient that way
Right.
to do it kind of sporadically. So,
Yeah, that
but
makes
it's a
sense.
good idea to see if we can add more lighting or update the fixtures on the ComEd, as maybe a lower cost option, but to provide additional visibility and safety.
So what's the direction or consensus on where do we end the lighting right now
Well,
with this project?
I actually am going to disagree. I would like to see it go all the way down Prairie. I think that it elevates that collector route, and at a time where we're trying to create branding and bring people into our downtown, that is a route into our downtown. And it signals to the people driving through there what they're coming to and what Brookfield is, and what it could be. I like the idea of doing the work while we're already doing the work, so to speak. I mean, we're already working on those blocks, but obviously, if we don't have consensus.
I mean, I'd love it too. I just, the $450,000 price takes, I think about different ways we could spend that to get us to a better point in other areas or other things, or, I don't know. I just need the board to kind of come together, so.
I can see where you're saying that. Now I'm thinking a little bit of like zoo traffic, and with our new signage there, newish signage there, that it could be another kind of signal to head that way and draw people into downtown down that corridor from the north parking lot.
You do also have a middle ground, which you could go just to Washington and then potentially look at, do you run lights on Washington to Grand, because you're kind of tying in your two main business areas a little bit more, and then you're not committing to going those extra 4 or 5 blocks all the way up to 31st, where it's really residential. You're not getting as much cross traffic.
I like that
from the zoo
Washington idea,
or-
because I do like lighting up that intersection a little bit more. There's a lot of things happening right there. And if we're gonna do the bump outs and that other stuff right there, that the lighting could tie in there nicer.
Would it go
team,
through
right?
both, would it
Washington.
end at the south end of Washington, or would it be both corners of Washington if we,
I think you'd need to look at the existing photometrics and see. I don't know off the top of my head where the existing ComEd pole is there. You maybe would do something kind of like what we show at Grant currently, if we were just to do up to Grant, where you'd have your 2 poles on either side, because it is such a traveled intersection, going both ways.
So you'd
And
have
then
one on
end
the
the
south
poles
and
at
one
the
on the
north
north,
side of the
kind of.
intersection,
Okay.
and go then transition to ComEd poles. But like I said, just to consider all options, you are then taking on some additional costs down the line. So
Maintenance issue.
Exactly. So that you're adding more lighting infrastructure that you need to maintain, and
And how much is the actual light changing as compared to the decorative pole or non-decorative pole?
it's hard to give a percentage. Lighting's tough to
Roughly, yeah.
quantify, but you would be increasing the amount of light that you're getting, the amount of visibility. We also would be installing opposite fixtures. Currently, you have on most of your residential blocks, if you have a 600-foot block, typically there's one ComEd pole at the intersection, there's one at the mid-block 300 feet down, and then there's one at the next intersection. So there are some dark spots. So where you'd be improving a lot would be those kind of 150 feet down in between poles. Gets pretty dark on a lot of these residential streets at night. So that's where we would see a lot of improvement.
It looks like there's only one ComEd pole right now on the southeast corner of Prairie and Washington. That's the only light pole existing.
That sounds right, Diana.
So this would be a big improvement at that intersection.
It would be a big improvement. I mean, there's a bus stop there. There's no light on that side of the street where the bus stop is, and there's definitely high traffic from, after school things for RB and a lot of the.
So the additional cost to go to Prairie and Washington would be 150-something thousand? I mean, that's 2 more blocks, right? You said 77,000.
Correct. Yeah, I had Grant to Washington as 154,000. And so that would just be Grant to Washington. We've already looked at 3 options up to Grant, which are, let's say, in the 75 range. So 225,000 total for lighting for the village, if you were to go from where we currently end to Washington.
Does anyone want to ask Doug if we got the money, so I don't have to?
Dad?
I prefer not to, but that's just me, I don't live in Brooklyn.
He's like,
He doesn't drive to work that way, so he doesn't care. No, I mean, again, we're thinking big, and I like it, just, I need some consensus here. Someone, are we leaning towards going all the way to Prairie and Washington? Or,
We started out talking from the alley to Grant, right?
Correct.
Doesn't the option we pick on that kind of go into Grant to Washington? I mean, because we're transitioning from 3700 block to this next section to this, I mean, what you'd be looking at from Grant to Washington is just the roadway lighting, right?
Yeah, and each option, I had shown roadway lighting at the north side of Grant, because would be the kind of the transition that makes sense, is you would transition through Grant into just roadway. So all 3 options, whether they were pedestrian, roadway, I had it as roadway at the intersection. It provides more lighting, and then you would make it's
But
similar.
I'm
to
saying
Grant
that the option we pick for here,
well, I don't think there's any thought of there's no thought of putting pedestrian lighting all the way down to Washington.
no, but what are we looking at for the option here? Are we looking at 2 then?
Yeah, how many at Washington?
So we transition from 3700 block was the pedestrian lights to option 2, which is the mix, to option 4, Grant to Washington, which is just the roadway lights.
That's
to
why I
your
think
question.
that's why I think it's weird. That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
So I think, like, I like option 3 for this, if we're gonna switch then to the roadway lights the rest of the way, because it keeps the blocks between Brookfield Breakfast and Grant same.
And then
You-
you transition after that.
I think you have a
Yeah.
feasible argument for all 3, because with option 3, where it's pedestrian, you do pedestrian to Grant, which is exactly what you did on Grand, so it's consistent, and then you transition a roadway, north of Grant. If you're doing combo, your argument is that, hey, we're kind of transitioning out of our business district, so we're kind of, doing a little bit of both, and then once we get to Grant, we're just all roadway, because we're fully out of that area. Or you could just go right to roadway, like option 1, and say, okay, we're out of our business district, we're not doing the sidewalk treatment or anything, we're just going roadway the rest of the way. So completely your preference. All are feasible, all are relatively similar costs, so.
I think we put it back on Doug.
but that all assumes that that you're assuming that we do want to extend the project along the lines of what you were just describing with the additional segment. I don't.
Up
but
to Grant?
Maybe the board
or-
does.
Yeah, so do you guys have, at least, is everyone on board with adding lighting up to Grant? Whether it's
Is that-
1, 2, or 3?
Yes.
And replacing the old concrete
Yes.
poles?
Yes.
Okay, so we got that. Now, who's in favor of going Grant to Washington in some form of another?
Kit, come on.
Okay, you raising your hand? Yeah.
He's thinking about it.
Julie?
It doesn't look like a race.
Not a majority.
Well, there's 4. There's 4. Kit, Jennifer.
Kit's hand is halfway
Can't
up.
He's got his pen in his mouth.
All right, there's 4.
I could see going to Washington.
So there's 4 in favor of going to Washington. Now we just got to figure out what's Grant to, well, because then there's a thought.
My point of going to Washington too, and maybe that's the other 3, you gotta stop somewhere.
Right.
But it almost seems like Washington is almost a better place to stop than Grant. Because we're already transitioning out of the commercial district, I guess. I mean, but you gotta stop somewhere.
Okay, if we are
Or
going.
not, I think Trustee Klusny said we can just
I
keep
think
going.
it's a little compromise, because the going all the way to 31st would be obviously very expensive. And I think it's still very expensive to go to Washington, but I think it's a good compromise.
Okay, so what do we want from Grant to Washington? And does that change what you have from the alley to Grant? I mean,
I think it's the
Grant from
roadway.
Washington is just the roadway.
Just the roadway.
okay, is that,
As proposed.
Option 1?
But for the block of Grams, or
Right.
up to Grams.
What do you want? If we're going pedestrian lighting only from Grant to Washington, what's the consensus then for,
No, roadway.
Roadway.
Only.
I'm saying roadway, but Trustee Clusie suggested that might affect what we do on that other block, right?
Like, on the block up to Grant.
I think as Dan was explaining, though, there still could be a logical transition. Doesn't necessarily have to be the same for both segments because the use is changing. right?
So are we going with the option 2? Which option are we going on from the alley to Grant?
I like 3, but I'm fine with whatever you guys like. I just like staying consistent for that whole block. Just makes sense to me, but
When it-
I'm also not a designer or
When
an
it-
engineer.
When it comes to option 3, can you give me an idea of the amount of light that would come out of that? Like do you know what I mean? Like, is it gonna change significantly for those people who live right there? Like, I forget what you call it.
It'd be similar to what you have on Grand. If anything, it'd be a little bit more because Grand because it's got diagonal parking, it's just a wider pavement. Prairie just has the parallel parking, so it's just a more narrow pavement, so it actually should provide more lighting than you currently have on Grand within the through lanes, but you will not have as much glare potentially into the houses because it's a lower fixture. So the one thing that we considered on Grand Boulevard when we were looking at having combination poles the whole way down is you do have some residential on like second floors and stuff. So does that provide additional glare by having all of those roadway fixtures? In this case, I think you'd be okay because you have much more tree cover on the rest of Grant. So I think you could go either way, and that's not as much of a consideration. But
That's my other question. There's no need to remove any trees for any of this, correct?
not that I'm
That
aware of.
stretch.
Depending on the selection, we would look like currently we just did everything consistent on option 3 there, and one of those is in a driveway. So obviously, some adjustments will have to be made depending on what the selection is, but we would try to avoid replacing or removing any mature trees.
So
Yeah,
again,
that's
someone suggests, and let me count, do you want option 2 or option 3?
I think
3.
Trustee Kaluzny had a suggestion.
3. Yeah.
I think 3,
3? Okay,
but
3.
not in the driveway of someone's house.
And no tree removal.
Let me mark that down.
Okay, so option 3 for the alley to Grant, and then, okay. Is that all you need?
Yes, so pedestrian lighting up to Grant, and then transition to roadway lighting up to Washington through that intersection. One thing that I'll kind of volunteer here is that if you'd like, we can, I can go in with this for the pre-final submittal, but over the, next month or 2 months, maybe we can come back and discuss a kind of a village-wide option for lighting, just so that before you make a commitment to this, you at least have an idea of, hey, our goal would be then to continue Grand to the circle, and so that there's a kind of a comprehensive plan in place before making this commitment. We can meet with staff potentially and make a recommendation, and we'll go in with this for the pre-final submittal, but before the finals due, you can weigh in on that, so that if there's any changes, then.
And the plan could consider maintenance, both like cost and
Replacement.
capacity. What's our plan for trying to maintain this infrastructure?
Yeah, I'll talk with DPW staff and see what we're currently incurring from maintenance costs for the ComEd poles, and we can put something
And don't
together.
forget to include Doug.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hate to bring this up even, but there aren't planters on these or banners, are there?
Right.
There's not planters on what?
Banners.
Planters
Oh.
or banners on this stretch?
So we,
Just say no.
there are currently on the existing poles that we did up to the alley,
Right.
there are banner arms, there are planter arms. We can customize it one way or the other. I would think you probably don't want those
Right.
things because it's more maintenance for public works with the planters and everything. The banners are gonna get hidden by all the trees.
Right.
if you do develop this whole area, we can look into welding some on after the fact. So these would be without either planter or banner arms.
Good question over there.
All right. Any other direction or decisions you need from us tonight?
No, that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks for laying it out and all the different options. Appreciate it. 27 will be here before we know it, so gives us a chance to come up with the money too, so. All right, that ends the items we have up for discussion tonight. I'm going to open back up to public comment. Is there anyone on this side that's any public comment? Hearing none. Anybody on this side has any public comment? Better not. We do not need to go into executive session tonight. So at 9 o'clock, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting.
So moved. Second.
The motion was made by trustee Whitehead, second by trustee Gilhooly. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ketchmark.
Aye.
Trustee Whitehead.
Aye.
Trustee Hendricks. Trustee Aramatsu.
Aye.
Trustee Gilhooly.
Aye.
Trustee Kaluzny.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we're adjourned at 9 PM. Thank you.